Newsletters will include info about new 24 Pearl Street programming, which includes several more free community events like this one, such as our upcoming Submit-a-thon on February 1st, our social media for writers presentation, which is on February 22nd, as well as a student open mic night reading featuring possibly you on March 28th. And we'll be putting information about those events also in the chat throughout the program. So today we have 4 of our wonderful winter 2024 faculty who have graciously agreed to share their writing with us, their beautiful writing. They're going to read in alphabetical order, and as I'm introducing each reader, links to their workshops and to their books will be posted in the chat. Please support our writers by purchasing their books. If you check out their book links, you'll see that they lead to a website for East End Books, which is an independently owned bookstore near the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown. We're happy to partner with East End Books for Wilder Words and for our in-person bookstore. As we begin, make sure you've muted your mic, and let's get started. So I'm going to introduce our first reader. Erin Adair-Hodges is the author of Let's All Die Happy, winner of the Agnes Lynch Starrett Poetry Prize and Every Form of Ruin, both from the Pitt Poetry Series. Recipient of the Alan Tate Prize and the Lorraine Williams Poetry Prize, her work has been featured in American Poetry Review, Gulf Coast Kenyon Review, PBS NewsHour, Plowshares, Sewanee Review, and more. She has received fellowships and scholarships from the Adirondack Center for Writing, Breadloaf Writers Conference, Sewanee Writers Conference, and Vermont Studio Center. Born and raised in New Mexico, she now lives with her family in Kansas City, Missouri. Please join me in welcoming Erin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jennifer, not just for tonight, but for all of the work that Jennifer does in planning and organizing and promoting, and Stephanie as well. I've really enjoyed working with both of you. And I'm so excited to hear Anders and Krysten and Sean as well this evening. And this is my first reading of the year, first reading in a while. So I'm excited. One of the things that Jennifer shared was to think about perhaps new directions. But I have to confess here, I haven't been writing a lot of poetry. I'm starting to get back into it. So I will be reading mostly from the book that came out last year, which is this, Every Form of Ruin. Black Thumb. The dogwood was threatening to swallow the back garden's light. So I borrowed a chainsaw and gas. Its last buries a memory of red, the fruit bitter, tiny angry mangoes in the mouth of its killer. Nights my son chooses his father to read him into silence. I practice not loving anything at all. Less like learning than remembering. As a child, I studied how to be a child. I was given a doll to care for, but could never remember its name. I left her face down everywhere. She had her father's eyes. Each morning, she greeted me with a blankness I chose to know as forgiveness. There, I said, and slapped her back. There, I say to the tree trunk, its pale O's of accusal. From his bedroom window, my son eyes me, holding the humming saw. What I look like to him is a memory only he is born to bear. Most of my first book is set against the landscape of New Mexico, where, again, I'm from, on the foothills of the Sandia and Manzano Mountains. And when I moved to the Midwest, I noticed that it affected my poetry. I think things got creepier, or they're darker. There was more dark. I mean, there's literally more darkness, more silence in somewhere, or the silence is different. All of these things I picked up on. And so on my way out to do a visiting term at the University of Toledo, I got lost in Kansas as the sun was setting. And I remember it was very, very rural, and all of a sudden I was on a dirt road. And my immediate thought was like, hey, what can happen? It's rural Kansas. And then I had this memory of my father when I was a sophomore in high school, taking us on spring break to Oklahoma and Kansas. I don't know why. And then he was like, you know what we're going to go do? We're going to go find the Clutter Farm, which if you have read In Cold Blood, you're like, why would you take children to that, sir, when the sun is setting? So I was on this dirt road, and I had this instant sort of like a flashback. So this is a meditation on childhood trauma. Unmappable. Kansas coos me into its wheat. Done with direction, I follow the lightning. God's arrows insisting even the desolate can be a destination. In the black and white of a winter dawn, a train zippers the wet land to a sky clouded with intention. It looks more like a photograph than a photograph resembles the moment it captures, its frame diverting, its filter slanting truths. Say I make of this a photo, what would the evidence show? That I was in a body here for a while and I wanted this to mean something? Is this the alibi or the crime? And who is the jury to receive this? No one knows I'm here. I loaded the car in Technicolor and drove east, had done milked the west of fresh starts, but the time changed. So now I don't know when I am. Kansas says it does not matter. Time rolls over its husks and soil like fog, changing nothing. So much land. Anybody could be buried out here. This is a poem that was part of a challenge I gave myself to write something in one sentence. And I find that just as often as I'm led by content, I'm led by the challenges of form. Sometimes more so when I feel like I've written everything I can possibly think to write about the things that I'm interested in. Civilization. You know that thing where you're someone's wife and you're out someplace with faces, and suddenly you're shaking with the room's potential for kindness or cruelty, while also finally understanding the tragedy of the dinner party, its reliance on food and talking, and how they both have to happen with the same whole. And this is a joke, both the truth and the awareness of the truth, and also humanness, how it happens just in one body for each of us. And there's no board to go to, should you wish to dispute the results, the where and when of this you. So you leave to the bathroom when the flan is served, and there is someone else's wife already there, smoking a cigarette she found in the host's son's room. And when you put your lips to where her lips have been, and inhale sharply the tar, you know she is barely in her body too. The heat of disappointment doing the deep valley of her philtrum. So what can you do but press your sweatered chest together, letting her heart murmur to yours its own meaty I-ams, your twin drums announcing the coming war, the kind of war where you must shelter from yourself in someone else. So you lean in together, your linea nigras humming into the other, seaming you into one. And when you kiss each of her tears, you swallow the memory of their making. The quiet bed, the uterine collapse, the daughter whittled down to bone. And then her lips take you in, blackbirds moving in the field like a churning night. And you know how as this is happening, you make a choice, and how thinking gives it shape. A pearl your longing has made, you rolling it with your tongue against your expensed teeth so that the choice becomes a secret. And when a husband knocks on the door to see how one of you are, you separate. Each wife holding in her mouth what she has seen, what she has chosen, and swallows. Part of the subject of this particular book was its initial working title was hysterical. And I was like, oh, get a hysteria and women, I'm fun, like using jokes. But then a book came out, or was coming out with that title. And I was like, I'm going to have to retitle it. But it became an opportunity to just kind of go in a whole new direction. And I realized that a lot of the poems were meditating on or expressing women's anger. That we are coached slash mandated to suppress. And especially depending on what cultures we're from. And so I was increasingly filled with fury. And so I looked to the Furies, also called the Erinese. And I ended up reading Aeschylus's Oresteia, the 3-play trilogy. And at the end, anyway, they decide like, well, the Furies are going to become the Eumenides, and Athena has the deciding vote because she's like, well, I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, so the basic story begins with Agamemnon and his, as my son would say, his bros. His bros are at war and they can't get good wind. Athena's mad at them. Like, what are we going to do? Like, obviously human sacrifice. And so they call up Agamemnon's own teenage daughter, Iphigenia. And some tales say that she was lured there and her mother gave her up because she was promised in marriage to Achilles. And I was like, first of all, that's super messed up. No wonder Clytemnestra was really mad and murdered her husband later, obviously. But also the plot reminded me of those like movies from the 90s, like those teen movies, like 80s and 90s, where like, oh, this girl's got glasses. She's ugly. Let's pretend she's popular. So this is love song as Iphigenia in a teen movie asked to prom as part of a prank. Mornings I wake to see what body the night has made, praying the measuring tape to click out happiness's 3-spun locker code. Dear diary, I scrawl my lamentations in an alphabet of swirls, burn them at the altar of straight hair, of the moon loving this blood away. I was born and then I waited, bounced around like an asterisk in other people's stories. The pre-prom days, an endless siege, eyeing the beach for some boy to break through. That bitch Helen, the school turned dogs for her, but still copying my math. My father hectors the football field, whistle swinging round his neck like a pendulum, counting down to something he thinks I can't understand. What I should have known, I did not suspect. The invitation into my life, into this boy gleaming from some God river inside him. That he knew my name meant happiness could learn it too. My mother brushing my hair, burnished like armor. Last minute the dress, the clinging revelation. I leave my glasses off, scent my wrists and neck. The pinned corsage of ecstatic amaranth tasseling my breast like my heart's own blooming. The crowd surrounds, they round their mouths in shock. And one more from that series. My best friends abuse her, takes her to court. And here I just want to say poems are not real. They cannot be used as evidence in a court of law. Just had to throw that out there. You might see why. My best friend's abuser takes her to court. A private eye serves her papers at work. Outside, it's all apples and gourds hollowed to haunt. We stab the flesh until it grins. Our black wings unfurl, and everyone asks what we are. Vengeance, I say. Justice, she corrects. He wants her to stop writing about the things he did, different than wanting to not have done them at all. We tongue our fangs in wedding, zip up our lady suits. It is not possible to forget the face of a man who's made you the door to his urge. We were not children together, so now I braid her hair. It takes all night, the married strands lioning her like a male whose only job is murder. In court, he says he is the unnamed darkness she writes of. The women around him sob. Electra's mourning the man and not the sister he slew. He cries too, heaving in a gold button blazer, claiming his only crime was loving too much. The hand he raises, swearing, as if any god could help him now. And my last poem, and again, thank you so much, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from everyone else, is one of the only newish poems I have from what is becoming a new book project on disability and memory, surrounding primarily around my mother's brain tumor and subsequent personality change. And a lot of super weird prose poems. So we'll see where it goes. Again, thank you so much. The Inheritance. My mother won't live forever, so I bake her into a cake. You are a cake now, mother, I say. I hope I am lemon, she says. She is lemon. This is one of a handful of ways in which we can be said to understand each other. She tells me in England, where she was born, eglantines grew around a trellis, their fragrance floating up through the open window where she lay in bed, the sun still hoarding the sky, neighborhood children wilding the street below. Her mother needed the silence of a girl's tongue tucked. My sweet little mother, her bedtime of roses and salt. But that is a different cake, mother, I say. So we bake her mother into that cake. It tastes of tin and grief. My now old mother pours us tea with the lemon slices, thin and grinning with a mouth full of sun. Should we be bad and have sugared tea with our grandmother cake? We should, we do. Our porcelain cups shiver, sugar cubes rising above the lip. Are you happy now, mother? I ask. She brushes the crumbs of her mother from her cake chin, which is also my chin. I have never known, she says, and lays her body on my plate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erin. That was lovely. That was great and exciting. Yeah, wow. A lot of that's going to stick with me for a while. Okay, so I want to introduce our next reader. Anders Carlson-Wee is the author of Disease of Kings, which just came out, as well The Low Passions, a New York Public Library book club selection, and Dynamite, winner of the Frost Place Chapbook Prize. His work has appeared in the Paris Review, the Washington Post, Harvard Review, BuzzFeed, American Poetry Review, and many other publications. The recipient of a fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts, he is the winner of the Poetry International Prize. Anders lives in Los Angeles, California. Please join me in welcoming Anders.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm thrilled to be reading with everyone tonight. And
Well,
I'm going
let's
to
knock it out.
Oh, get ready to roll. Yeah, I'm going to read for you a selection of poems from Disease of Kings, my new book that just came out. I'll hit it off with the first poem in the collection, which is called Hired. The Grand Dam's window rolled down, but it was too dark out to see in. A hand waved me over. A voice asked if I wanted to make some quick cash, standing right where I was standing for the next 10 minutes. Simple as that. Just stand here, I said. Simple as that, the voice said, and the hand stretched out a 20. It was weirdly humiliating, doing what I was already doing. Like being told to act natural on camera and sensing that who you are is failing to entertain. 10 minutes passed. 15, 20. Hey, I'd never made so much in such little time. Never been so nervous, doing nothing. I kept needing the car to come back. Some sign it was over. A horn, a gunshot, the rising pitch of oncoming sirens. I could accept I'd never know what I'd been used for, but I wanted proof it was finished. So there's some amount of irony to the first poem in the book being called Hired, because this collection, Disease of Canes, follows a friendship between two young men who refuse to take traditional work. They sort of live off the grid and dumpster dive for all of their food and clothing, and sort of have all these little scams going as ways to make money. Um, and this next poem is sort of a origin story of that sort of scrappy lifestyle that I lived all through my 20s. I kind of have like a pathological frugality in me that I think I inherited from my grandfather. And I grew up in northern Minnesota, and my parents are both Lutheran pastors. So a lot of my childhood was sitting in church and shuffling back and forth. But up there, it's freezing cold in the winter, right? It's so cold outside that kids cannot wait outside for the school bus. You have to wait indoors, and then the bus will park somewhere, and then everybody will run out from their houses. So getting to school takes forever. And this next poem takes place in that environment in the winter. So I just wanted to give you a little sense of how cold it is. This one's called Cups. Hovering near the line, I watch a lady order coffee and ask for a second empty cup. But once she has the cup in hand, she thinks better of it and, leaving, drops it in the trash. I know about cups. They're trees, ground to a pulp and coated with thin skins of plastic, not unlike condoms, that make recycling impossible. In ninth grade, I kept a Subway cup in my locker and cradled it each day at lunch beneath my coat as I trudged through sub-zero winds and gusting snows to the franchise, where I'd blend in with the crowd who'd already ordered, then step boldly toward the soda fountain, which was patrolled by the staff, and fill my cup with Sprite, Dr. Pepper, Mellow Yellow, Cherry Coke, making what we called a graveyard. I had the cup so long, I named him, bathed him daily at the drinking fountain near the gym, and I never let his lip get torn or pinched. What stopped all this was Subway updating its logo. Instantly, my cup looked old and wrong, and I couldn't keep making my graveyard, unless I was willing to switch to a new cup, which I was and did. So that's sort of a kind of silly story about my weird frugal brain. But yeah, as I mentioned, this collection gets into, it sort of tracks this friendship between the speaker, who's sort of based on me, sort of a fictionalized version of me, and his only friend, North. And these two have a very like codependent relationship. They're living off the grid, so they kind of don't interact with society very much. And so they're really dependent on each other for both their sort of daily needs, but also for all of their emotional needs. And a big element in the collection is the differences between their two families. The speaker of the collection has these pastors for parents and sort of a safety net. If he gets into trouble doing this weird lifestyle, he can sort of get bailed out by his folks. And meanwhile, his friend North not only does not have a safety net, but is also taking care of an alcoholic father and providing him with like financial aid. And so the two characters are in very different situations with their families. And this next poem sort of draws on that and sort of draws attention to that difference. And this one also, it takes place in Minnesota in the winter. So we're keeping that winter theme for a second. And this one also sort of tracks one of the ways that they avoid the monetary system altogether. This one's called Snow. It was the law. You had 4 hours after snowfall to get your sidewalk cleared. Our landlord hated the chore so much he paid us $5 per inch toward rent. North shoveled. I came behind with salt that glowed in the streetlights like a second snow, as if we were unmaking and remaking the conditions. That winter, North's dad disappeared again, but this time, North didn't bother to report it. Thanksgiving passed. Christmas came and went. It's deep, but it's easy, North said one night, tossing load after load over his shoulder, the powder twisting in the sky and shushing against his coat. Each time the snow let up, we pored over weather reports, hoping for blizzards. If it keeps up like this, I said, February will be free. In March, his dad was back in town, 20 pounds lighter with no explanation, fishing for little loans. When he heard about February's good fortune, he started leaning on North. My own dad had never asked me for anything, and I tried to imagine what it would be like to know him that way. The snow kept coming down. What are you going to do? I said, fanning cupfuls of salt on the concrete. North shrugged. Give him February. You can't, I said. North lifted a shovelful and heaved it. Stop picturing your own dad, he said. By April, February was spent. In May, North asked if his dad could move in. He was much younger in person than North had made him seem. We gave him a closet, but soon his shit was everywhere. This is temporary, I kept saying. Without snow, the rent outdid us. I caved and made the call. My dad covered most of the summer, treated the three of us to dinner. I'd forgotten how embarrassing it was when he offered to pray over meals. But glancing around the table, I realized everyone was grateful but me. So one of the central narrative elements as the book progresses is the sort of the comings and goings of the friend North. Basically, after section 1, that you sort of get to know them and their lifestyle, and then after section 1, North departs to take seasonal work, fishing in Alaska, and he's sort of doing that. He's sort of taking some responsibility in order to be able to help his dad. So he's sort of off to work, and the speaker is left alone back at their house, sort of continuing this lifestyle that they have of scrapping. And he's really lonely and sort of desolate a little bit. So he decides to start renting out North's bedroom as a bed and breakfast, as a way to sort of gain some company in his life. And so he's having these guests come and stay with him at the bed and breakfast, and then he's cooking them meals with a bunch of food that he's finding in the dumpsters. But of course, he's not telling his guests that. So there's a little bit of comic relief going on with his little B&B. Don't stay at my bed and breakfast is what I'm like, kind of the hint I'm giving you right now. But anyway, during that section, while North is gone, you get a series of dramatic monologues from the guests who have come to stay with the speaker at this bed and breakfast. And this next poem is one of those monologues. This one is from Lou's perspective. Lou is in his 70s, and he's in town to bet on horse races. You don't start at zero. You start way below zero. You got your gas money, admission. You grab a dog and a beer and hit the ATM, which takes a not so small fee. By the time you set eyes on horses, you're down 30, 40 bucks and you haven't even placed a bet. I started coming when my wife died. She wouldn't marry a gambler, so after her funeral was my first chance in 47 years. Oh, I don't bet a lot of money. If you don't bet a lot, you can't make a lot, but you can stay in it. Some guys, they hit the pick 3 in the superfecta. Those guys are gods. Not me. I just work the chalk and try to stay out of the red. To tide me over, my wife used to let me bet chocolate chips. We'd watch the races on TV and place our bets in bowls. She'd tease me for playing it safe. Loosen up, she'd say. Then she'd put it all on Here Is Happy to win. She loved that horse. She'd lose, of course, and go make cookies with her losses while I worked the chalk. After 47 years of that, it's hard to remember I'm betting real money, losing real money. When I win, I remember. I can tell you that much. I'll never be a god, but I'm still here. The only god I ever met in person was my wife. No bullshit. She hit the superfecta one time, filled her bowl on 4 horses and named the order, the exact order, 1, 2, 3, 4, and she won. After we stopped shouting and cussing and jumping up and down, we did a little 2-step right there on the living room rug. And at the end, I even dipped her. She had red hair for miles. It was beautiful. So I'll just do one more poem for you all. I know this is sort of just a sampler plate, a sort of flight of poems, but I hope you all get to check out the book and sort of see the rest on your own time. But this is comes near the end of the book and is an epistolary poem, a sort of a letter to North from the speaker. Near the end of the book, and sort of they've sort of gone through some things on the way that has narratively like divided them, and so this is kind of like a letter reaching out to North. This one's called "Lay It Bare." I know you're hungry for it, more money, more news, desperate for any laurel that parades you as happier than you know you are. A car, a cruise, some haircut reeking so deeply of depression, no one with a nose could miss it. Making more each year, spending more, the pride of how little time you have to spare. I know I embarrass you, still living on expired food I find, dented tuna I squirrel away, spending at a pace slower than a pulse. Slow, that's what I have. I'm not happy either. I walk past bars where flush people drink, markets where I dumpster what I eat, down streets quiet enough to hush the last 10 years, parks dark enough to find Gemini, Lyra. I don't wish you were poor. I wish you were here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anders. That was great. Thanks. It's good to hear your voice. So just a quick note for everyone, if you have any tech troubles, you can send me a direct message through the chat, or if you're knocked out entirely, you can always email me. I'm keeping my eye on the email. Yeah, I'm your person for all things tech. All right. So now I want you to join me in welcoming our next reader, Krysten Hill, who is new to the 24 Pearl Street Fine Arts Work Center faculty family. She is the author of How Her Spirit Got Out, which received a Jean Piedrick Prize in 2017. Her work has been featured in the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day series, in Poetry Magazine, Pank, Up the Staircase Quarterly, Winter Tangerine Review, and elsewhere. She received a Vermont Studio Center residency in 2023, a Mass Cultural Council Poetry Fellowship in 2020, and a St. Botolph Club Foundation Emerging Artist Award in 2016. Krysten is an educator and writer who has featured at the Massachusetts Poetry Festival. I saw her there. She was wonderful. Also at the Boston Book Festival, Blacksmith House, New Hampshire Poetry Festival, and elsewhere. Please join me in welcoming the lovely Krysten Hill.
Thank y'all so much. I'm so honored to be here, and also honored to kind of give a sample of kind of work, so y'all can, like Anders said, kind of hear like a flight of our of our work. I thought that was a great way of putting that. I'm also going to speak to some of the themes that I've noticed in the other authors' work. Can everybody hear me okay? Just give me a thumbs up. Okay. I'm always unsure about like online spaces, how I'm kind of being translated. I'm going to begin with a poem that was in The City of Notions, an anthology of contemporary Boston poems. This was edited by our past poet laureate, Daniela Gross-Georges. And so I'm happy to have a poem in this. And also what was really weird is before the reading, we had a few references to Plath, and it just felt like Plath is calling. And when Plath calls, I just answer. So this is my poem for Sylvia Plath, and also you'll hear kind of this teenage voice. I was a big Plath fan. I am a big Plath fan. And one thing that was really cool is I got to write a roast for Sylvia Plath. I challenge that as a good prompt to just write a literary roast of someone who you love or who you hate. I also have a good poem about Bukowski. I have a love-hate poem with love-hate relationship with Bukowski. But this is my poem for Sylvia Plath. Are you there, Plath? It's me. You frigid New England diva of death, with your affected tea time voice hanging around like a nasty Boston winter. How exactly do I eat them? Men, I mean. Is this safe? Can I eat women too? Your kind of woman is a spreading jaw around the boy I like in gym. When I'm daydreaming, I imagine eating him like snakes eat mice on TV. Yesterday, the pet constrictor in biology mistook my teacher's hand for a man. It clamped its mouth and wouldn't let go. The teacher just stood there dumb, and nobody ran for help. My love would be large like your Ted in my stomach. My body would stretch around it like a garbage bag. Sometimes I dream of baking my mother into a pie. Do you? What kind of fruit would you use? A group of us made a book club of you. We blew out our voices to sound like you. We were wondering if we could be your debutantes coming in the season of our simmering self-hate. Our volcanic tempers only a mother could blame when they went off and found their good knives in their clean kitchens. Can we come to your debutante ball in pristine beekeeping suits? Our fathers are big bastard bees who never raised their heads to see how we'd grown. Our mothers are pitchers of fatigue that never stop pouring their dreams into our glasses. Our houses are too quiet. Can you teach us how to make grief a swarm that stings, that sings? Oh, Sylvia, when your poems dangled from your blue tongue into our mouths, we took it like big-headed baby birds. We wove our cynicism into our vocabulary to exhaust our underpaid English teachers. Oh, how we filled the weird wells of our journals to be as wounding as those overreacting poppies in July. And our mothers, our poor mothers who cringed when they saw you with your tight mummy mouth on the back of the bell jar that we tucked under our arms like cute leather clutches. Oh, you prim lady of gloom, you white ferocious moon. We are hooked hearts thrown into the sea that catch everything. We are an army running for the tide who cry. We want a polished vicious. We want murderous throats, affairs that resemble bright birds in death spirals. We want our hurt star-shaped on the top of gaudy Christmas trees. We want to name our crawl spaces after our dead mothers. We want parades of swollen paper-mache cadaver floats to sit on top and wave like fucking Miss America. So continuing with like speaking to the themes of some of the poems or the poets that I read earlier, I'm gonna read this poem that is oddly serious, like kind of similar to Erin, the poem that you read about the dogwood. There was a beautiful tree in our backyard that got cut down because, and we'll see. And then it became about something else. Dangerous things. The tree in the backyard is dangerous, the landlord says, and must come down. You watch from your balcony when they start to take the limbs away. Nests knitted to the branches tangled together on the lawn. The workers point out all they knew was rot, its potential for damage. No one asks you. Why would they? You don't know anything about trees. Don't even know what kind it is by the leaves. A week ago, this tree surprised you with flowers. White flags that smelled like your mama every time you walked onto your back porch. You reached off the railing and clipped a piece, brought it into the house. The flowers wept in the cramped heat of your kitchen. You should leave some things alone. Today, the workers are gentle with the nests. They cradle them before they bag them. You leave your house before it's done. The surviving birds louder than the chainsaws swooping and shitting on your patio furniture. You come back to the abandoned sky and the face of a clean-cut stump. You think every violent gone belongs to you. Going with that theme of, I don't know, a lot of y'all are writing some great poems about location and people and character. And I kind of wanted to read some poems about kind of personal history. And I'm gonna read a poem about how my family ended up moving to Kansas City. They lived outside of Boonville, Missouri, and their house mysteriously burnt down. And that was kind of why they made this trip to Kansas City. So I'm gonna read a little bit of that. Accident. The whispers started when the midwife kept fishing 8-pound black boys from Amanda Ellen's strong thighs. All 5 of them born alive. It was too much, this fortune of boys dangling in front of the depression, fat with a promise of more. All of them muscle and clench, born with heads full of hair and fists bared like teeth. They never learned to put their hands down, kept them ready when the white boys threatened to cut them off and stuff them in their mouths. There were too many whispers when each survived the rope, war overseas, lucky, unscarred, and handsome in uniform. All came back to land they owned and pretty wives they built houses and hung curtains for. In 1956, one of the brothers, my grandfather, already had 8 mouths to feed and the audacity to buy a bright red tractor. They watched him sit on top of all that brand new machine and spit. What can we break him with? Later, he will say it was an accident, that the house was hit by lightning. No one will remember any storm that night. But it was the whispers that shot him from his sleep. Before the porch lit up the windows, he saw ghosts through white curtains. My grandfather piled his wide-eyed babies on a mattress, dragging them through the determined choke of a burning house. When the fire department arrived, no one hurried to put out the scorched bodies of tables and chairs, whispering how lucky they made it out alive to stand in the yard and watch. Two more poems. I'm learning to kind of knot a lot of the anger that Erin was talking about earlier, that sense of like, when your anger is justified, but you've been socialized to believe there is no space for it. And also the way that women are socialized to kind of pretend that everything's all right, especially when we feel like we're in danger. So this is a poem that I feel like is a Boston poem, but it can be an anywhere poem too. And this is a new one. This is called Bleeding Women. I moved a dude's hand off my leg at a Boston bar after the Bruins won a game I didn't care about. He was full of beer and conquering, assumed he could have anything. That was the feeling coming from every bright TV screen, men skating in circles, small flowers of blood on their jerseys. He petted my thigh and left his hand there, still talking to the TV. I pinched his skin, lifted it off, like you do when you're a woman alone in a room full of people, trying to avoid a scene, signaling for the check. Moments like these, I want to grow 5 rows of teeth, sever their grabbing parts, blood everywhere, bathing me. But the girl who survived worse whispers, keep it together until you get outside. Then this dude, looking at his suffering hand, said to his beer, you must be bleeding. Like he'd be irresistible if I wasn't. Like blood from me was a flaw in my function that could turn me off. Also, yes, I have seen, do see women bleeding all the time. I've watched lifetimes of them standing in my kitchen, on the news, Dateline, even cartoons where spunky protagonists wipe a line from their girl mouths before running back at a big bad. When will you be next? Keith Morrison suggests. Will he narrate the history that led me to getting myself bled? As I pushed my body away, dude waved at me, yelled over the screaming TVs, have a safe night, my beautiful wife. I'm gonna end with this poem. I originally wrote this for a student at UMass Boston. I'm a teacher. I love teaching. I also understand when students have difficult days, also teachers have difficult days. We all have difficult days. And so this poem started as that, but then became something else. And you'll hear kind of also the threads of the dangers of silencing and what it is to keep all that silencing inside. It has to come out somehow, right? And I'm gonna end with this poem. Nothing. I ask a student how I can help her. Nothing is on her paper. It's been that way for 35 minutes. She has a headache. She asked to leave early. Maybe I asked the wrong question. I've always been dumb with questions. When I hurt, I too have a hard time accepting advice or gentleness. I owe for an education that hurt, and collectors call my mama's house. I do nothing about my unpaid bills as if that will help. I do nothing about the mold on my ceiling and it spreads. I do nothing about the cat's litter box and she pisses on my new bath mat. Nothing isn't an absence. Silence isn't nothing. I told a woman I loved her and she never talked to me again. I told my mama a man hurt me and her hard silence told me to keep my story to myself. Nothing is full of something, a mask that grows where you cut at it. I've lost 3 aunts when white doctors told them the thing they felt was nothing. My aunt said nothing when it clawed at her breathing. I sat in a room while it killed her. I'm afraid when nothing keeps me in bed for days. I imagine what my beautiful aunts are becoming underground and I cry for them in my sleep where no one can see. Nothing is in my bedroom, but I smell my aunt's perfume and wake to my name called from nowhere. I've never looked into the sky and said it was empty. Maybe that's why I imagine a God up there to feel what seems unimaginable. Some days I want to live inside the words more than my own Black body. When the white man shoves me so that he can get on the bus first, when he says I am nothing, but fits it inside a word and no one stops him, I wear a bruise in the morning where he touched me before I was born. My mama's shame spreads inside me. I've heard her say there was nothing in a grocery store she could afford. I've heard her tell the landlord she had nothing to her name. There was nothing I could do for the young Black woman who disappeared on her way to campus. They found her purse and her phone, but nothing led them to her. Nobody was there to hold Renisha McBride's hand when she was scared of dying. I worry poems are nothing against it. My mama said if I became a poet or a teacher, I'd make nothing. but I've thrown words like rocks and hit something in a room when I aimed for a window. One student says that when he writes, it feels like nothing can stop him. His laughter unlocks a door. He invites me into his living. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you so much, Krysten. Those poems were incredibly powerful. I could see people's faces, and I could tell just all of us were really moved by your poetry and your sharing. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have one more poet left, reader left. And I think I didn't say this earlier, but Anders is also new to the 24 Pearl Street Fine Arts Work Center faculty family. Erin has taught with us before, but she is teaching something new. She's teaching a career in publishing genre class, so you should check that out because it's a little bit different, more about bringing your book into the world. And our next reader is also new. His name is Sean Singer, and he is the author of Discography, winner of the Yale Series of Younger Poets Prize, selected by W.S. Merwin, and the Norman Farber First Book Award from the Poetry Society of America. As well, he's the author of the collections Honey and Smoke and Today in the Taxi, which won the 2022 National Jewish Book Award. He runs a manuscript consultation service on his website, SeanSingerPoetry.com, where I think you can also sign up for his very popular Substack. Please join me in welcoming Sean Singer.
Hi, thanks so much for your attention. And I'm going to read from my book, which is about my experiences driving a taxi in New York City, which I did from the fall of 14 until COVID started. They're all prose poems. And there are three sort of main characters, which you'll hear. Franz Kafka, the bass player Charles Mingus, and the Lord, who is a female voice. Start my timer. Okay. 1/10. Today in the taxi, I brought a man from Midtown to someplace in Astoria near the airport. He asked me to take him round trip. We got to the address and he waited outside the place, and someone came out and handed him a brown paper bag. The man gave the person some cash, then we left. He asked me to drive him to the E train instead. I don't believe in saints or omens, early winds, or the pink luck of a sunset. I don't see the Lord's love with her incisions and furry ornaments. The vehicle's not just a way to get to the crime, but somehow to bless whatever the journey needs. I use my braking and steering inputs to turn inward, or even go down the uncertain road. Anti-venom. Today in the taxi, I got a fare from Parkchester to the Bronx Zoo. She finally came out of the building, put her baby in the car seat and said, "I forgot something upstairs." Then she left the baby in the car and went back inside for about 7 or 8 minutes. I couldn't believe it. I'm a safe person to leave a baby with, but she didn't know that. I was nervous. Some people live without contradiction. I remained calm, though the situation was beyond the job description. Don Bias had a serpent's tooth affixed to the octave key of his tenor saxophone. Perhaps it helped him push into the wilderness or to ward off evil. One sunny July, Kafka says he wept over the report of the trial of Marie Abraham, who, because of poverty and hunger, strangled her 9-month-old with a man's tie she used as a garter. Burnt plastic. Today in the taxi, I picked up a Wall Street type on Park Avenue near 48th Street. He was going to Montclair, New Jersey. His house was on fire, and he spent the trip on the phone barking orders at his wife, his roofer, his contractor, his insurance company, and at me. He kept saying, "Go this way," or "Which way are you going?" He said to someone, there are firearms and ammunition in the house. Periodically, he held back tears. It was a long 25 miles for me, and I suppose longer for him. We got there and the house was burning. The Talmud says, nature rules over all things except the terror it inspires. Days of winter. Today in the taxi, I brought a Chinese couple, parents of a student at Columbia, from Amsterdam Avenue to JFK. The girl was crying, the mother was crying. The parents sat in silence for most of the trip. They didn't speak English, and I didn't speak Chinese. I did offer them a little package of tissues. On the other hand, the sun came out and it warmed to 24 degrees. A driver should find a fixed object on the road, such as a sign or a tree, and when the car in front passes it, count 3 seconds before his own car passes it. Then add a second for each hazard, rain or darkness. The road is not unlike a little press between vessel that the car pushes along its black bloodstream. A psalm instructs that it will be as it is said. Limbo. Today in the taxi driving a commercial real estate type from 43rd and Madison to 57th and Park, I said, would you prefer to go at Madison or Park? He said, it doesn't matter, either way, we're fucked. And it was true when a black pair of birds burst from the building like fulfillment. I too seek to weave a memory from foam. A black bottle opener in the blackest bottle and the flow of liquids. You cannot know it, you can see it. General Beadle Smith reported that in April 1945, when they liberated Buchenwald, he witnessed General Eisenhower go to the opposite side of the road and vomit. From a distance, I saw Patton bend over, holding his head with one hand and his abdomen with the other. I too became sick. When the oncoming headlights are too bright, it is said you should look to the side at the lines on the road. You would stop yourself from being blinded, and stop yourself to imagine the road ahead unstrung and the rubber against it. Rights. Today in the taxi, I brought a woman from Morningside Avenue to 38th and 8th. She said, I'm going to be singing back here. I have to rehearse. She sang up and she sang down, the alto flutter and the tree stump cut from a hill. A writer said, we call ourselves not only what we are, but also what we seek to be. Driving, it must be noted, is about 10% physical and 90% mental. The wheel obeys the commands of the rose brain and its taught rituals. E minor sonata. Today in the taxi driving north on 31st Street in Astoria, a bus went through a red light and nearly killed me and my passenger. Hit with a heavy object, some carry-on with wet fur is misshapen red, part raccoon and washed in road light. If ever there was wanting, you have found it. If something was lost, let it be discovered. Dusk's varnish, please swallow the continent whole. Earlier, my passengers were making out like they were the last people on Earth. Simone Weil said, attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. Real gone. Tonight in the taxi, I picked up a guy in Lower Manhattan. He'd been drinking hard and could barely stand. I said, where are we going? He said, Hoboken, then immediately passed out. I drove into the Holland Tunnel. When we were almost out of the fluorescent lights, I didn't know what I'd do with him. The police say to carry naloxone in case someone overdoses. Then he woke up and told me where to go. After jazz at Massey Hall, Charles Mingus was unhappy with how his bass was recorded, then re-recorded himself playing bass over himself. It was as if sensing his own flabby weakness, he made the whole room feel as he did, and the wood swelled or shrunk depending on his mood, and turning sour or full, the body of Mingus in his blood. Empty. Today in the taxi, I got a couple in Lafayette Street going to the Home Depot on West 23rd Street. The woman was about 8 months pregnant. At some point, the man started sobbing. We're in debt every month. We're so close to the edge. I can't do this anymore. The woman said, I'll return it. I had no idea you were this upset. I've never seen you this upset before. The man was hysterically crying. We're in debt every month and it doesn't bother you. You don't care. When we're on 6th Avenue, the woman asked me to pull over and they got out. Poor lovers, one volcano pouring lava from one mouth into one's other till one unravels. Pink gloves. Tonight in the taxi, I drove 4 women from a bachelorette party, complete with their tiaras and feathers, to another bar. Already happy, they pushed the bride to be forward and she asked me how I thought she looked. I was too taken aback to answer much of anything. She was liquid, prehistoric, and my little body burned. I thought of the Lord throwing handfuls of sequins at the party as if to say, there is no other life but this one. Purple Death. Tonight in the taxi, I knew the silence in the car with its grain and stain-proof velour that absorbed the silence on the other side of the windshield. The city vibrated and pushed the air up or down as wind among the petals. I thought of insects who might seek yellow pollen to stave off their own destruction. Kafka saw butterflies as great opened-out books of magic. It's possible, but not now, that the Lord will open the door and suck the noise out of the car with her tongue. It's possible for her, but she won't do it now. She will be happy if one day there are no sounds attached to words and no ears to hear them. Which seed? Today in the taxi, my passenger was crying into her phone. She just had a miscarriage. Who was she talking to? Her mother, perhaps. She hoped there was an invisible hand that had some purpose in her tragedy. I pictured the Lord and her shelf of jars and vapors, her amino acids and carbons fit together with one black wheel and one white wheel. Every Sabbath, the rabbi would remove the slip of paper with her name on it from the golem's mouth, and it would become lifeless, nothing but a thimbleful of little clay cells. Take hold of it. Tomorrow in the taxi, it will be another day. I'll read the book twice, then lend it out for someone else to read quickly, then I'll read it again. When a prophet asked the Lord about what the book meant, she said, turn it and turn it again, for everything is in it. I pictured the black fire of her ink and the white fire of her parchment, everything far-reaching. Among the blur of noise and chaos of the demonic coming from the city's every window, she commented, be silent, for this is the way I have determined it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean. Wow, macrocosm and microcosm all together. This reading was so good. Everybody was like was awesome. And if you agree with me, put your comments in the chat and let the readers know what you thought of their work, buy their books, of course. But I'm going to wrap things up while you're all doing that. I hope to meet all of you back here again at our next event. I mentioned it before, but I'm going to mention it again. It's a submit-a-thon on February 1st, featuring and facilitated by MP Carver of Mass Poetry. And that's where we crowdsource our submitting efforts and we encourage each other, and there's prizes. It's super exciting. You can sign up on our website. And then we'll have on February 22nd, the Social Media for Writers presentation by a Bookstagram Instagram guru, Betty Kuyate. And she's going to help us all figure out how we can manage our social media and help us as writers using social media. And then lastly, Student Open Mic Night, March 28th, facilitated by Melissa Studdard, one of our faculty members, great poet and YouTuber. And that Student Open Mic Night is featuring Winter 2024 students of 24 Pearl Street. So you get to meet each other, read work. You don't have to, but it's great if you read work that you produce during the class, and faculty and staff are welcome to attend as well, and they have in the past. So yeah, thanks everybody. Thank you so much. This has been great. Again, buy books, read books, and I'll see you all very soon. Keep reading, keep writing, keep dreaming, and have an excellent night. Bye-bye.